Hello, everybody. So we're up to module 8, so pretty much at the end. I have some things to go over that I think will be useful. Little odds and ends that weren't necessarily on that list of objectives put together at the beginning of the semester, or with this particular special ops course didn't make the list, but things I think will be useful. The one for tonight is something I like to show in just about every software development course I teach, because it was never brought up in any courses I had. And that's what do we do when the program's finished? Because we don't give people source code, right? That's not how software runs. People expect certain things, and putting those together, I spent a while struggling trying to figure everything out to get all those standards like we're used to. So I like to mention at least one course. I believe most of the people on here are PC users. There is one Mac user. And point out the software I use. Tia, let me log in with my Mac quick.
I was like, it's me. I'm the one Mac user.
But it doesn't have to be specific. So even if you're a Windows user, if your software is cross-platform and you want to install it on a Mac, you have to build the installer on a Mac. Installers are not built cross-platform. Same thing for Linux. So I guess this applies to everybody, but the one I was going to work through tonight was going to be the Windows one, because most people are on Windows. So as far as installers, oops, I don't want to log in with the Mac. I just want to join the Zoom call. The one on the Mac is very similar. That's why I use this one. It's very close to the one I use for Windows. It's basically a big GUI that we walk through. I've tried a few, and well, another thing, there's not a good free option for the Mac ones. I did discover that. If I share my screen here, so we're going to kind of walk through an installer on a Windows machine. There's a couple other steps before we get to the installer I want to talk about as well, that apply on every system with what should be obvious transitions. So we'll go in the App Store. The one I've been using, they've changed the name a few times, but currently it's called Product Builder. So if you search the App Store for that, it was free for a while, and then about 3 or 4 years ago, they went from free to $3.99, and at some point this year they raised it to $4.99, which still isn't very expensive, especially if you're going to make money off of it, right? If you're going to make money off that software, then $5 for the installer is pretty much, you're going to make that back very, very quickly. So hopefully not too big of a deal, but you do have to have the Xcode installed for that one. I don't remember quickly, in the spring semester, weren't you using Xcode yet? Was that you or somebody else?
Oh, I don't think that was me, but I do have Xcode installed. But I've never used it.
Okay, yeah, you do have to have Xcode installed, but it will install Xcode for you. So things like that, we want to see that. Like if the software depends on something else, how exactly do we get it in there? But it's basically just a big GUI, and you fill out the form, everything's labeled clearly. That one's really easy to use. It'll be similar.
I just want you to know this has a 1 star.
I didn't look at it. I didn't look at the rating. Product Builder. Probably should have looked at that. I've been using that one for a couple of years. Oh, 1 out of 5. Oh.
But it's kind of sus. Nobody's used it except that one person.
Yeah. Wait, there's got to be more on there.
11 years ago was their only review.
apparently. It was free 11 years ago. That's the one I've been using for a while. It's obviously not the only one that exists, so uh, you can look around and try to see what other ones are there. Really, ultimately, what it is it's in the case of the Mac, it's something that writes a shell script for us. On Windows, it's something that writes the batch script, but it's a big batch script. When we get to that part, you don't know how quickly computers write text files. It takes it 3 or 4 minutes. So imagine how long it would take you to write a text file that takes a computer 3 or 4 minutes to write. It's quite a chore to type the whole thing up manually. So those installers are the GUIs are straightforward. All the text boxes are clearly labeled in most of them. And then to make sure it ties into this class, I was going to look at the GitHub releases page. We look at packages where we push out our CI/CD pipelines. But there's also there's a tab for releases. So when we build our installer, I'll just put one on there. So I guess first thing we need is a piece of software. So I'm gonna go over here and make a trivial little piece of software to work with. Get that away from the Zoom buttons so that they hopefully won't get in the way. So I don't want to clutter it up all the software development part. So as normal, I'm just going to make a little hello world so we don't clutter up with the coding part. Oops, not that button. I'm going to push Alt D so I get the address bar and open supply with this directory. And then all the stuff we've seen before, probably want to make it a Git repository because that is what this class is about. I'll make a file read.py, and just because of the nature, I wanted to do a more complicated hello world. So I'm going to read the words hello world from a text file. So I'll open another one. Program data.txt. And our program data is going to be the words hello, and we'll just, because of what this example is covering and going over and stuff, I want to spread it out. So a more complicated hello world, but we'll just read from that. So over in our Python thing with open program data.txt for read mode as from file. Everybody's seen this before? You may have seen another syntax like from file equals open and then that name.
I was gonna say that's the usual way I do it, is the second way you did it.
So same thing, if we use with, it has some rudimentary error handling inside of it. And what I really like about this other syntax, you get the same result, but this is what I think it was just the generic Python syntax, right? Keyword, the part of our situation, then a semicolon, and then we indent stuff. So at least in my mind, I think that fits better. But we also get some rudimentary error handling. Not good when it spits out a message if the file's not found. So it spits out a nicer looking message than if we didn't have that there and just got a regular traceback. But a couple things. That's an alternative way of reading a file, but I'll open that, and words is from file dot read. Yeah. And then we can move through it, right? 4 words in or W in words. I guess that should be lines, but there's only one line there, so the read method that you're used to breaks it down into the natural splitting point for that type of element, which in the case of a file, the natural splitting point is going to be on line breaks. So one line, but we only have one line there. And then I'll print those. I'll put in a function, make it extra hard. Speak. And then that is going to print phrase. And if name is equal to main, I'll put my hand in the right spot on the keyboard. We can call that method. So a little more complicated than it needs to be to print those words, but I wanted to make it dependent on something, was one of the things I wanted to look at. Oops, that's not what I meant to click. Get out of this and then get that to check. So it reads the stuff from that text file, which I guess should really be down here. Actually, that should probably be in its own method. Let me indent that and put it in its method. Define, think and then speak. That sounds like you're good. Some good words to use for that. Can I fit that all on the screen? Okay, there. If I do that, it all fits on the screen. So trivial stuff in the Python code, because that's not really what we're looking at, but enough that it's something we can see. So what's going on there makes sense to everybody? Nothing, hopefully nothing new and overwhelming as far as Python code goes. A different way to write it. Put a space in there. But ultimately what it does is just print hello world. Oops. I put the cursor down here. Python greet.py. Oh, I didn't do that. Birds. And that in the parameter. There we go. Make it look complicated. I'll make sure that works this time. Python greet.py. Yeah. So make it look complicated, but pass the return from the first function in as the argument for the second function, and then print that out on the screen. And just a string in another file. But the reason I wanted to talk about that was because of in this file. It has some components that would be more like what we would have in a program. In particular, it has another file that our program depends on. It's not just the script itself. So that part works. So I'm going to go over here and go ahead and add that to get add dot. Have we done this in class? If you're on a Windows machine where you have the address bar, we can pass in command. We can pass in terminal commands to the address bar. If it's something that you would expect the result from, or actually need to read the result, that's not a good way to do it. But for like staging our files and committing our files, we don't necessarily need to see the result from that. Hit commit, commit, and skip over that message part because we don't necessarily need to see that. Okay, so the repository is up to date with the software. It's all running. But we wouldn't want to give this to the end user, right? Most people are used to clicking on icons. So we go click on that icon. It runs, but it runs really, really quickly. We could do that. There are some tricks we could work in to make that stay open. I'll show one of those. I can go back to Sublime. Open that back up in Sublime, and then if I open that file, if we wanted it to stay open, we could say, input, press enter key to exit. That's the way I usually do it. Just set something for the input and then don't do anything with that input. So once, but it will stay open until the script gets the input. It's a way we could force that to the words to show up long enough for a human to read them. But everything still seems to work the same. I'm gonna go ahead and take that out of there. And just stick with what we have. So if we want to give this to a user, that normal double click thing that most people are used to doing is not going to work. Which is something we always want to do. We want to give the users something they can work with. In particular, if we try to create a shortcut for that. Create a shortcut. A shortcut to that's going to do the same thing. So usually what we want to do is have some sort of script that starts that. So that would be a batch file. On Windows, a batch file. On Linux, a shell script, so a .sh file. Or a lot of people like to leave the extension off the .sh. That way, since those are executable, we just ask for it by name. On a Mac, technically, there's .command files, but most people just write the shell scripts because those are easier than the command files. We can also put it in a .application, a folder that's called .application. So like in this case, we call it greet.application. The folder greet.application, and then Mac OS would know what to do when we double click on that folder. It would look for any executables inside there. But a lot of times we're going to have more than one Python script. So in that case, the MacBook wouldn't know. I guess it could be there's multiple types of MacBooks. I'm used to just or Macs. Mac OS wouldn't know which one of those Python scripts to run. So typically we call, like in this case, we call it greet.application, and then it's going to seal up that folder. An executable file is also a zip folder, if you weren't aware of that. An executable file is just a zip folder that the computer knows which file inside it to start with. So we would call it like greet.application, and then inside there's that greet.py, so it would know to run one that has magic name. Or put a shell script inside that has the same name as the .application folder, and that way Mac OS knows which one to run. In the case of Windows, it would be a batch file, so I'm just going to write a batch file here, which is a list of command prompt instructions that so we pass in order to what we would type in the terminal to run it, right? So I'll create that. So create greet.bat for short for batch. I'll go ahead and create that file. Have you all seen batch files before? A little bit. I see a head nod here in the classroom. If you have, it's a bunch of terminal instructions, and it will go ahead and type all of the instructions that we type in here, along with every single thing that happens, unless we turn that off. The first thing we want to type is usually @echo all. That way we only get things printed back to the screen if we explicitly ask for them. It's an older thing, so comments or remarks. This is a comment. And then we would just pass in our instructions, which in this case, we want the Python interpreter to look at the current directory. I'm going to put it in quote marks. Quote marks are optional. If you have spaces in your file name, you have to have quote marks. I'll leave them all here. I think everybody in this class is over halfway through the SDEV program. So hopefully by now you're aware of what happens or how to deal with spaces in file names in the terminal. strap it in quote marks if you want to do that. So now there's the instructions needed to run our. I come up with a notice for that file Windows knew what to do with it. So this time, if I double click on it, it still runs just as quick. In this case, we probably want to come down and do pause. Say pause, and that's a more normal stopping point. That's why I took that one out a second ago. Then we in this folder, and we get the output from our program, and the pause is it's going to wait until to make sure the human sees it. Most of your software is probably going to have a GUI affiliated with it, right? Even if you're just printing out a message, you're probably going to bring in the tkinter.file dialog message box, and that way it's a nice looking message. It doesn't look like it's showing in the terminal. So in that case, we would want the terminal to fly very quickly and then have a nice looking box, something nice looking on the screen. But if you want that to go away, you submit the pause line. I haven't done this in a while, but I've started using PowerShell a lot for these scripts. Let's see if I can remember batch shell. So if %F, is that what it is? %F, because there's another thing. We only want to do this if our file is present. I might have to go Google it. It's been a minute since I did it in a batch file. But this is what you're all going to do when you do it anyway, right? You're not going to remember seeing it this night 2 years from now when you need to do it. I've done it many, many times and still not committed to it. Check for file.
It's the real use for Chat GPT right here.
Yes. Oh, that's a great one. ChatGPT. The modern way of writing code. I'm pretty sure it's right at the top. Yeah, right here. This is the same one I look. If exist, insert file name here. Oh, I don't need the %F. Or if I scroll down, I see something with %F. Nope. So, yeah. Like Nathan pointed out, this is a great one for chatbots. It's always the thing. This one. So if exists and then some file, and our software can't run without program data.txt. So we need to make sure that that is there. And if it is, then we. If it's not, let's say this is going to a terminal. I do echo. Let me check something in command prompt, which is 3. No, that's a short. 2. Let's see if something works. Echo hello into yeah, that worked. If it's not there, this is the error handling that never shows up in class, right? Like when you all see classrooms, we have tight time constraints. So when we're looking over like try catch blocks or in Python try except blocks, if we don't handle the exception or the error, what happens? The program stops running and it prints out a message. But textbooks and tutorials, textbooks because it has to be a unique situation every time. They restrict it. Tutorials because they're restricted for time, like we look at YouTube tutorial. When we see those, The example of a try catch block is to stop the program from running and print out a message, which is what happens if we don't handle the exception. So that's not really exception handling. What we want to do is fix the exception. So we're going to look and see if this file exists. And if it doesn't, then we're going to echo the words hello world into a new file called the current directory called program data.txt. So if the file doesn't exist, then we fix the problem. We don't just stop the run and spit out a message. That's something that almost never shows up in classroom examples because it's in an if-else here, but in real situations, like after you all graduate and get jobs as software developers, it is more common that what's in the except in Python exception, right? We have try, then stuff we want to happen, and then exception, so where we catch the exception, it is actually more common for that to be longer than the actual program itself in order to fix whatever issue you hit, as opposed to just stopping the run and then doing that. If that file is not there, we'll fix the problem and then start it. I think I still need the pause line. I think pause out. Oh, no, pause is still there. Does that make sense? So instead of giving the user the program, we give the user a program that makes sure all the resources we need are there. So probably gonna have some icons and stuff like so, and logo.ico and background.png and
Would you have to check to see if the greet.py is there as well?
probably a good idea. And exist greet.py. That one I'm not going to completely rewrite. Oh, wait, maybe it's not in. Dash in. Yeah, we probably should. I can't remember the syntax for and here. I've started using PowerShell, which is modern syntax. I can't remember what we did back in 1983. Whatever and was in 1983 would go there. Oh, I think I need to wrap things in parentheses. Need more parentheses, but yes, that would be a good idea. So yeah, following that line, you want to make sure everything is in order and then run the program. So, and delete that one, that was just a quick test. So this is what we would actually give the user. And when it runs, they don't see any difference. They don't see any difference than if they would have like actually knew how to run the source code and ran it themselves. So that was never covered in any of my classes, so I like to make sure and cover it. But a batch file has a very specific icon. The Windows machine knows what to do with that. So this is the one we want to make a shortcut to. Create a shortcut and then probably change the logo. I'm just going to open Paint and draw a logo. I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time on this. I'm just going to open Paint. How big is, oh, well, they apparently had something very, very large open. So make that small, like logo size. Okay, I zoomed way out and made it really small and it's still huge. See what that is. Oh, not 300%. Okay, that looks like a good size for a logo. So I'm just going to grab the crown and choose something like skin colored and just draw a quick hand here. Not a very good name. We try that again. Actually, eyes won't matter so much here. Home. Finger. You know what? I have my pen in front of me. I don't know why I'm doing that. I have a actual drawing tool here. Way better. Okay, so there's our logo for the. We'll make the index finger a little bit bigger. That way it doesn't look like the middle finger is not the biggest one. So there's a logo for us. I'll go save that. Because we're gonna have things like that along the way too, right? Got our logo. And to get an ICO file, I always just use online converters. So we Google online ICO converter. This top one right here, ICOconverter.com, is one I've been using for a while. It gives us all the multi-sized icons. So ICO files can have lots of images in one file. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, so I clicked all 5 boxes, so it'll have 5 images in one file, depending on which size we need. And the computer will just pick the closest one to the size we need for anything. So I've been using this one for quite a while. I'll upload the logo, choose the sizes, and convert it, and it should automatically download. Downloads and copy that over to the thing with all the actual files. So once again, rename that as logo.ico. Once again, like you pointed out on the batch file, Nathan, we would probably want to check to make sure the logo is there before we try to do stuff. Although the icon, that needs to be the thing they actually click on, right? So one reason for making a shortcut, there's multiple reasons for making a shortcut, but a shortcut, we have complete control over what icon shows on there and everything. So if you right click on it and go to properties, we have way more control over that shortcut icon, the button there. And then the shortcut tab is change icon button. Not one there, so I'm just going to browse the file we're actually in. Choose that icon. So this is the one we would actually give a user. And probably take off the word shortcut. Maybe make it just say create. And then throw that on the desktop. That's what we expect to get from software, right? And then the user just comes along and double clicks on it. So the key point there is you want to run it from a batch file, not running the code itself. So whether it's a Java program, a Python program, has anybody tried Mojo yet? Just came out this summer. Python 4,000 times faster. The guy that made Swift, and he's made several other big languages, and he's made several compilers. But when Apple saw one of the most recent, before that project, the most recent programming language he wrote, when Apple saw that, they completely switched and said they're only going to use that language before he's looking at it. But he took Python and made it 4,000 times faster, which is actually still a lot slower than some of our other languages. It's still one of the slower languages, but it's a lot faster than it was. And programmers are probably going to keep continuing to choose to use Python because it's just easier. But whatever type of program it is, Lua, C++, right, in Java, C++, we have to have our batch file. We have to have our batch file do some compiling and different things. Start up virtual servers and run it from a port in the browser in the background or something so we can see it. Whatever we need to do in order to run our software, we would handle all of that in like a batch file or a PowerShell script, or on a Linux, they're just called shell scripts, the .sh files. Most people use .sh on Macs as well. So technically there is a .command file, which is the official one to use on a Mac. But those sort of things, the terminal instructions in a file. Then we make a shortcut to that, which I guess I drag it over here. I don't really need to keep it anyway. And then that shortcut is what we give the user to click on. And if you want to put it in the start menu, it goes in a special place. You just take a copy of that shortcut, and I think it's in Windows. I haven't done this in a long time because we're getting ready to look at automating the process. Not there. Maybe it's this one. Oh, that's the beach stuff. In one of these folders, there's the C drive Windows, there's a folder that has a folder in it called Start. And to get it added to the Start menu over there in the All Apps, you just put it in that folder. So to install stuff, really all the installer is doing is a fancy copy and paste. Similar on a Mac, since you probably would want to take cross-platform stuff, even if you're not a Mac user, you probably want to take stuff that runs for Mac users. Mac users pay better than Windows users. Linux users won't even look at your software if it's not open source. But it goes in your applications folder, and then the launcher knows what to do from the applications folder. I don't have any installed on my Mac. I haven't really done anything since I released it. But a similar thing, there's just, you put it in a certain spot, and then the computer knows what to do with it from there. I'm gonna delete that starting link. So that's what we want to get to the users. The finished product there is hopefully all those steps make sense. It's not just our program and the resources our program depends on. It's the rest of that stuff. The batch file that confirms all of our resources are there. So at least the data file in this case, like Nathan pointed out, probably want to make sure that script hasn't been deleted if we're starting it from a batch file. And we don't want users to edit this. So the shortcut needs to go in a certain spot. One shortcut copies and pastes onto the desktop. Another shortcut would go somewhere where there's read-only access. That's what program files and program files x86 are. There's these two folders have read-only access, so people can't change those files. Which can be a problem for data file. Like if your program's going to be doing a lot of reading and writing, you probably want to set up a folder somewhere else that it can do that, but that's just creating a folder, right? Let me just open this up. Terminal, I did it in a batch file, so I'll jump over to command prompt. Same instruction there, but we would just add this somewhere, right? Make directories, D:, users, this particular user, I'll go with /local /programs /my program. Put it where Python's installed. We'll just put a file, a folder over there for our software to do all the reading and writing. We can make that directory and then store that in a variable that our code can refer to. And hopefully the logic there makes sense, because actually doing that would just be a big time consuming part. But we don't need to read or write. But if you do need, if your software is going to do writing, remember, probably want to install your software in either program files or program files x86. But you can't write anything from there. So just remember to set up a place that you can write to. So this folder is what we need to get to the user. In particular, we need to get it to a certain spot on the user's computer. So again, probably don't want to just trust the users to give them the zip file and say, put this in your programs file, programs x86 folder. And then create another folder over in your user, somewhere nested deep inside the hidden folders in the user directory. Right? We don't want to say that. We don't want to do all that process. We could set up another script that would do that. Because it's just copy and paste, right? Copy from the GitHub URL. Obviously, we're going to put it on GitHub. That's why it was made as a repository right at the beginning. And kind of fits with our class. Copy from that URL and paste in programs x86. And copy from that URL and paste in Windows/system/Microsoft/start. That's where it's at. There's a Microsoft folder. There might be one more in there. There's a whole lot of folders. It's a lot of clicking to get there. But there's a particular one that we copy and paste our file into in order to show up on the start menu here. But a whole lot of copy and pasting and putting all that stuff together. And education goes a long way. I was kind of jumping right to the end. Certain things, for those who didn't have me in class before, let me draw a picture on the board. Users expect certain things. If they open up your software for the very first time, and right over here is a button that says file, most people know to click there, and right below it is going to be a button called new. So people know how to start using that file as soon as they use it. So it's not a rule that we have to make our GUIs look like that, but it's a really good idea, because when somebody opens your software, you only have about 3 seconds to convince them to use your software. So they better be able to look at it and figure out what to do automatically. So if the very top button in the menu says file and the top button in there says new, people are going to know how to start a file, and then you buy yourself at least a few more seconds to convince them to use your software. Y'all probably all done that, right? You're looking for a piece of software and find like a best of list. So you start downloading things, you check the first one on the software, first one on the list, open it up, and about 4 seconds later, you haven't figured out how to start working on it. So you delete that and go to the next one on the list. You only have a couple seconds to convince somebody to use your software, and you're not going to be there. You're not going to be there to show them how to use it. So following conventions goes a long way. Installers are the same way. I've been doing that a lot lately. Use it with this summer for the summer camp. Use the Godot game engine, which some of the game engines are incredibly difficult to set up. To put Unity and Unreal on your computer, you need to dedicate at least a day. You need to spend the whole afternoon getting your computer set up just to install the software. So in the open source Godot, one of the things they want to do is make it easy. So you just download a zip folder and the executable's right there. They didn't do an installer, but have to keep explaining that to. I've been explaining that to people over and over again all summer long, because people aren't used to it. That user expectations, what users get when we install software. Do we have any? I have an ISO. That's not an installer. Well, the software I'm getting ready to look at. It's gonna come down with an executable installer. Right? The executable installers on Windows, we have two kinds. .exe and .msi. So a Microsoft installer are the ones where everything's automated. You just click it, you click start, confirm that it's okay, and it runs through the whole process. The executable installers are the ones with the wizard where we go step by step. Then on Mac OS, there's equivalent ones. So that one, that software I pointed out at the beginning is kind of like what we're going to look at. We're going to look at one that makes executable installers. That one at the beginning makes the PKG files for Mac. Those are the ones where when you run the installer, you get a little wizard. You can step through some boxes and make choices. Or there's also DMG. Yeah, DMG, which those are the ones that when you run the installer, a little window pops up and says, drag this file to your applications folder. So you just drag it over there and then everything else happens automatically. So the same type of installers. Might want to Google and look for best of list. That's always my recommendation. Software to create installers. The one I was going to look at tonight was done in the classroom. I did that Google right search right there or something very similar to it. Look for a best of list. Yeah, so like the top 10 software creation tools. 4 great tools to create Windows installer packages, something like this. And kind of go through them. No fault is not free, but if you're making good software developer money, remember that's itemized deduction on your taxes. Advanced installer. I haven't ever used that one. It's kind of nice, but notice how there's a lot of typing going on there. Wix toolset has powerful ones. There's a lot more than 4 out there. Oh, 19 best installer for Windows programs. 19 is probably a better list to look at. Eno's right at the top. That's a pretty good one. I don't think it's free. As a student, you might want to add the word free in there. This is the one I was going to look at, which I pulled off that list, and it's really easy to follow exact examples. I've been using it for a couple years. We don't have signatures. An important thing is digital signatures. I wasn't going to include that tonight. Digital signature. Probably don't go with the free tools. The free tools are at best a free sample. Basically, you pay somebody to confirm your identity. You pay the same person that will pop up a warning message on somebody's computer saying that they can't identify who wrote the software, which does fit the definition of racketeering, but it's not, I guess. It's a perfect match for the definition of racketeering. We pay the person that tells people not to install our software if we don't pay them. But just search for digital certificate, and that's how you get the signatures. Perfectly fits the definition of racketeering. Same way Bugsy Siegel made his first fortune, showing up with a can of gasoline and a baseball bat and offering to protect people from ruffians that would break their legs and set their store on fire. But they say they're different somehow. But yeah, just search for digital certificate. You'll see a bunch of them out there, and then you just pay those people to not tell users to avoid installing your software. So install Forge, if you want to just search for that directly, this is the one I've been using in classroom examples for a couple years now. It's pretty easy to follow along. It makes executable installers really well for a Windows machine. I'm also used on a couple of releases. if you have your digital certificate, it'll pick that up. I wasn't really gonna do much more on that. It's just really easy. Just, yeah, like I said, just go do Google digital certificate, or is the technical name, but you get better results if you did Google digital signature. And they'll give, they'll have lots of step-by-step guides when you buy the product. So we want to download, and this is an open source one. I'm a big fan of open source, a special topics course. The next time I run a special topics course, my next plan is actually to please click the file name. Oh. I'm so used to the automatic download. It didn't start automatically. Yeah, the next open source, the next special topics course I'm gonna run next time I run one, which not this fall, but the following fall. I think all of y'all will be graduated by then. I'm gonna start running them every fall because there's more stuff we can cover. The next one I run is going to be an open source class, where instead of starting from scratch with a program, we find an existing program and extend it. So do something like download Sweet Home, the source code for Sweet Home, and then add it so that that's one where we draw our blueprints and it generates a 3D model of the house with paint and all that stuff, what the finished product's gonna look like. ArchViz is what it's called, architectural visualization. So ArchViz, or ArchViz, however you want to pronounce that. The obvious acronym for architectural visualization. But something for the course where we download that source code and then add some functions in it, so that when we generate our house, it gives us a bill of materials, so we know how much it would cost to build that house, that sort of thing. Or yeah, there's plenty of them. This one's fine. I've used it many times.
I love how Chrome decides what's dangerous and what's not.
Yeah, yeah. So this that thing I was just talking about. I've used this software many times. I know it's fine. Where's the old one? Okay, I'll try a different one. I've been using that one for years. It's fine, but and keep it or use a different one. Should we use a different one? Yeah, let's use a different one. That way I'm looking around the buttons and y'all see the process. Freeze where to create installers. Let's take this list. Free installer creator for Windows 11 10. This will probably work. Out there. That was just a picture. Fix tool set, installware. Some of these cost, I know cost money. NullSoft is not free. So I don't know why that's on there. Wix is not free. I don't know. Installware, I've never used that one. Free software installer go for Windows. Let's see what this one is. Easy to use, free installer. Are there pictures on here? Features.
That looks like one I used to use years ago.
Yeah, they all follow convention. They all mimic NullSoft. For a long time, NullSoft was the only one available. And it's very rare that you will see an interface that doesn't look like this. I see all the parts we need. That'll work. Download. Let's see if Chrome will. Yeah, that's the thing I was talking about. somebody forgot to give Google money to not tell people their software is dangerous. Even though their software has been around for decades and works fine. I guess this is it. Download the latest version. Where's the download? I guess this. Let's see if these people paid somebody to, yeah. Yeah, I already said my thoughts about that. It perfectly matches the definition of racketeering. If we don't give them money, they are the ones that tell people our software is dangerous. But it's part of the industry. You probably sell it from their store. Well, this downloads, the typical cut is there's different places. Most of them it's a yearly fee, so like Amazon, saying so the Apple store, you pay about $100 a year, $120 a year, I think now, and they keep 30%. They get 30% of the sales, so you get 70% of the sales. Microsoft Store is pretty much equivalent. It might be about $5 cheaper than the Apple Store. Google, the Google stores, Chrome Store or the Play Store, those only have a one-time fee. So you might want to make that sooner rather than later, because prices go up over time. So like when I bought it, it was $25, but it's a one-time fee, so that's good forever. I think it's up to $30 now. So before long, it's going to go up to $35. Just like everything else, the price goes up. So if you're having the software development, you know you're going to sell stuff on the Chrome Store eventually. So even if you don't have anything to sell yet, I would kind of recommend going in and paying that one-time fee before the price goes up with inflation. Amazon is a little bit cheaper than Microsoft and Apple Store. It's $99 a year. The standard cut, they get 30% of it. It's Amazon. So for Microsoft stores, Apple stores, Google stores, you have to pass criteria. They have automated testing, and depending on the app, they might have real human testing that you have to pass. Your software has to pass, or you'll be there. Not the case with Amazon. With Amazon, you could call your software a virus and describe it as this destroys people's computers, and Amazon will still be happy to sell it for $5 pop and take their 30% cut off of it. So whatever you put there, there's no criteria to put it on Amazon. One really nice thing about Amazon though is they do the paperwork for you. So you get the tax forms every year, the government, you get all the proper paperwork already. With Microsoft and Apple and Google, if you're selling your own stuff, you have to keep track of all that document. You have to document everything. Okay, so it looks like that installer came down. Let's give that a try. In the downloads folder, I'll double click that and install. And y'all can't see the Zoom call to pick this up, but the box that y'all, I think everybody's seen it. Do you want to allow this app to make changes to your device? I'll click yes. And close this stuff in the background. And it looks like this one's an MSI because everything's just running. Yes, one's an MSI. We didn't have any options or anything. But now it should be ready to run it. I want the free version. Free to use, no license required for creating simple installations. Some options are disabled. We probably don't need every option. So, looks fairly straightforward. The one thing to remember about these, from the pictures, it looked like this was going to make the .execute.exe, even though it was an MSI itself. So remember, any options we put here are about that installer wizard, not about the software. So logos and icons and things that we put on here will refer to our own thing. Oh, this one's really short, so let's see what this is, or maybe do the pro trial. Oh, actually. Okay, I guess I closed out of that and got the button. I was expecting all this, so I was expecting something like this. This is the typical appearance of, has been for decades, many years, since Nullsoft was the only option out there for making the software. It's been pretty standard to copy the interface from Nullsoft. Things are going in the same order. So general is our information. What's our product? We got greeting, version 1.0.1, traditional versioning system stuff. A description. Says hello to the user. Some sort of company. Anybody seen build managers? Maven, Gradle, anything like that? You might at some point. I'll skip over that. So company name is something you want to have, or which also often applies to a website. So we need unique names for our company to be recognized. So instead of putting the actual company name, what's usually done is we turn the web address around. So we know a web address has to be unique, like globally unique. Nobody else can have that same domain as us. So for our automated build managers, we have to have a unique name ourselves. So the company name, instead of giving actual company names, what's common is to turn the website around. So like in this case, it would say com.website, or I'll put in one of mine. So there's one of my domains. So for the company, com.csfrancis 555. Take off the support page. Usually it'll be marked if we need everything. So our parameters, who are we installing it for? This is setting up the wizard, so we probably want to ask users. So ask the user and maybe set it up for current user by default. That's available in the Pro option only. I was surprised to see the other one. So I guess, yeah, a Pro user only one, or current user only. Product ID, this goes into registry key. If we want it to be something specific, we could change that, probably just keep it like it is. The previous version. Remove the old use, I'll just keep the defaults there. You can see there's lots of options. It's a GUI. We're going to quickly walk through it, but you're going to want to spend time clicking around and seeing all the buttons. This sort of thing's kind of an important one. Requirements, what version does it run on? Sure, I'll just leave them all checked. Does it require an internet connection? Do we need to close other things while it's running? What would be an example of that? Yeah, I guess if we were doing something on Tomcat, so that if we made a Java application that was going to run on Tomcat, which is a web server, usually on port 8080, and then spit that back out to the front end for the users so they couldn't really tell they were in a browser, we would want to make sure that anything on the browser on port 8080 was not running at the same time as our application. Because we want to use port 8080. That would be an application for that. Prereqs, the pro list has more, but we probably want Python for ours. You have a PDF documentation coming with it. You might want to make sure that some sort of PDF reader's on there, but most everybody has a browser. Well, we're making a Windows installer. You cannot uninstall Edge. They just won't allow it. So there is a way to read PDFs, all documentation. Thing we're making a executable file, all the data enclosed in it. We're going to output it to. Looks like right now it wants to go see the users. Let's see if I can put it to the same place. Do work. Read installer exe. Probably should have mentioned it before I erased that, but did y'all notice how there was something in angle brackets? That's how we do variables here. So that's standard for all of our installer software. There's some variables. We'll see another one here in a second. But I think it had application name. So it was just using this name right here. So it was using what we said is the product name for the installer. And that's where we're going to get our thing. Icon file, we have an icon. So
Maybe that's only in the folder.
okay. Yeah, probably only in the pro version. Set up exe. Oh wait, this is what I want to call. So I want to go to this folder and I want to make Greet setup. Yeah, and I guess that's probably a pro version feature. It won't let me edit it. And anyway, so this we would normally change our icon here. But this is the icon for the installer, not the icon for our application. We'll get to that in a moment. But you can see how we're just going through filling out this form. Install, what are we going to install? So I want to go over here and I want to install this whole folder. That thing we just put together, all of that. And it's going to go in. So there's some variables. Someplace app data / app name. Where's app data going? I don't see app data on the list. It's a variable, so I don't think it's going to the other one. And what is our main executable here? We want to actually run that batch file. We're going to install all those files.
Do you have to add the files?
I think that adds them one at a time.
Oh.
So I just added it as a whole folder. And remove them and try that. No, I'll leave that there. So I went to, I think I did, I just chose the folder first and added everything in there. Remove on uninstall, include the folder name, okay. I somehow got off. Oh, source directory. Okay, this is what we're copying. So like this, yeah. And then these are the ones we can remove one, some if we don't want to install it. So notice it didn't bring over that .git folder. Anything that's a hidden folder, you'd want to add that explicitly or remove things. Shortcuts. And a shortcut. Okay, yeah. It looks like they followed the conventions. Most of them that you will try out look very similar to this. It's like that thing I drew on the board a moment. But you see it once, most of them are going to look similar to this. Thicker islands to try out, so see what the other differences are. So target file start, and we want to start the batch file. Desktop, that's good spot for it. The name, the description, any parameters we would need to start with it. So if we needed to pass in command line when we start, we pretty much never do that in Python. In Java and C++, that's a lot more common. But if you need to pass in parameters, so these are like the command line parameters. Where we install it, where is it going towards? Install directory, start boot.bat, put it on the desktop, give it a name. I assume description is the hover text. Like when we hover up, usually a little bubble pops up. You'll want to try all these things. We have our icons of the ICO file. It's pretty common to have a long list of icons since I use the ICO file that have 5 types, 5 sizes in one image instead of 5 separate ones. I'm just going to click on that, but we might have 5 separate images, one for each size instead of 5 sizes in one file. In which case, they go in alphabetical order. If you have a bunch of icons on there, all of your ICO files, just put them in alphabetical order. In Python, put it in a list and then .sort, and there's your index number for those pictures, whatever you wanted to call them. That's pretty standard. Show normal, that sounds good. Y'all can try different options, see what it does. So that gives us a shortcut. We probably want one in the start menu as well, along with desktop. Program menu, assume that's the start menu. Well, a moment ago when I clicked on the variable, it opened up the help documentation. I think that's the start menu. I haven't used this one before. And I'm guessing program group would be a folder in the start menu. That's my guess from what it is. I haven't used this particular software before. Again, we want to start the same file, this one that we're installing. A description of it, y'all can try that. We don't need any parameters on ours, and it'll have the same icon. So we got a couple, a desktop, and I assume program menu means menu. I clicked on something that pulled up, I clicked on one of the variables and it pulled up a help menu. That looked like it was really nice, but it doesn't seem to be pulling up on this one. So we set up our shortcut. Uninstaller, we probably want an uninstaller because the same way an install is a copy and paste, an uninstaller is just a delete, but humans aren't used to that. Nor do they know where we copied and pasted the program to. This is kind of all we're going to look at tonight, so it's probably only going to be about 10 more minutes. I'm guessing there's only a couple more tabs to go through. And y'all want to do this afterwards, but it looks like it's coming right on time. We would normally take a break. Probably do a full uninstallation in the control panel. All that stuff, you can read that. All of the installer packages, if you try out a few different ones, right? There was a bunch of those best of lists. One of them had 19. You might do that list at some point and find what you like. Because if you're studying software development, I assume you have plans to develop software. So you probably want to set up some installer packages. Where to check for updates. All that. I'm leaving a lot of these on default. I don't recognize any of those labels, so I'm not sure what those would do. I'd have to actually try it. But y'all can try that, right? Just check an option, run it, and see what's different from the last option. You don't know how to do that. Our interface, this is one that sometimes throws people off. Remember, this is about the install wizard. So the interface on that. Modern, the classic one, or the silent installer. Oh, I guess that's gonna make the MSI file. And this one's gonna make the executable file. And change this one. What do these look like? Let's select a file to preview it, and I don't see a preview. Unless that is what the picture looks like. I'm just gonna leave it at the default, but we could just change, notice it's a BMP, not an IPO. So that's kind of an indication we can use any type of image, right? Maybe not an SVG, maybe not vector graphics, but any of our non-vector graphics, any of our raster graphics would probably work. Start dialog, we want to license, probably want to show a license. Where's the license file? We don't have one, but y'all have seen that on GitHub, right? GitHub has all the standard open source licenses and copies of some of the proprietary license just so that they're convenient. They used to have only the open source one because they're a big open source thing. But people got used to looking for licensing there, the license there. So GitHub started including common proprietary ones as well. So we can get our license from that and just put it in the file, put it in the folder with all the rest of your files, and we'll review it in the directory. Pretty straightforward. In all of them, you're always going to want to make sure you choose at least one language. This is for the installer, so at least one language for the installer to run in. It probably doesn't have auto translate, so if you want to put the installer in Chinese as well, make sure you can type it up in Chinese, or at least run it through Google Translate and copy and paste it into Chinese and hope it came out correctly, or Russian, or yeah. It doesn't automatically translate. It just checks the user's computer to see what language they speak and then shows that version. You still have to write the other language one. These usually aren't that fancy of software, even on the paid for version. What's this? Additional information. I don't think we need any of that. Configure it. It looks like stuff for your config file. So really just the stuff on the main thing and choose a language from the interface one. System is more advanced stuff, but we're going to put it in the registry. I'm going to skip going into the registry now, but depending on what your software is doing and how much control you want to have over it instead of the user, you can set it in the registry and move stuff to the background. Environment variables, if you want to go ahead and create environment variables, it automatically starts. So go ahead and create an environment variable to your path. The buttons are grayed out, so I think that's on the Pro one. Kind of like when we install VS Code, right? All of our terminals on our system will be able to enter the word code, and VS Code is going to start. So we just set up an environment variable so we can ask for it. The same way we would create an environment variable afterwards, but it looks like the buttons are grayed out, so that's probably on the paid for one. So that's all the way through there. Just go through, fill out the form. most of it's gonna be in the general one, getting your information in there. What are we installing? The interface one is questions about the, remember the interface is not the interface in your software, it's the interface on the GUI. And when all that's ready, we should be able to, yeah, the big run button is build project. Oh, probably want to save this first. Let's save this. I'll just put it right here. Make installer. Yeah, I'll call it make installer. Seems like a good name for it. That way we don't have to start from the beginning, start from scratch. So now if we hit build, main executable is not specified. Icon of this file is used as product icon in the programs and features. Yes. Right click on installation files and select so here's our installation files. This is going to be our main executable. Like, pretty short.
It did say create a right click, but I think copy it to that is what it's on you.
Right click on installation.
It's a bad description.
It won't let me type. Open file location. Oh, there it is. Set as main executable. Okay, I did not see that button at all the first time, but eventually when I right clicked, it did show up there. So I'm not sure what I did different. Let's try that again.
It doesn't look where you saved it.
Oh, I think it's a good place to save it. It looked like it ran complete. I don't have anything else running on an 8 gig computer, but you notice that wasn't basically instantaneous, right? The text file. I've seen it take a couple minutes to do that. Open location. And now we have
Make installer.
oh, make installer is the this one. So it's the greet.setup should install that on our computer. There we go. I did not mean to put the batch file over here. So I apparently messed something up, but minimize this. But I do see the one with the logo. So I apparently made an extra copy somewhere.
I think that's when you moved it over manually.
Oh, yeah, that would make sense. So it takes a couple tries. I've never used that particular software before. They all look very similar. Hopefully that's enough. Y'all can figure out how to go click around on them, right? But I can go click on that on the desktop. And the program runs just like it did. And if we ignore this one down here, let me delete that one. That's the sort of thing we would give to the user. So you can see it's just as easy as filling out the form. Same thing for a Mac, and this particular program up into the batch file would be cross-platform. All we would need to do is write a Mac specific script that did the same thing, and a Linux specific script that did the same thing. Python ran any of them. Part of Mac OS and Linux operating system was written with Python, so we know Python's installed. On a Windows machine, we might have to check to make sure Python's installed, but Mac and Linux, part of the operating system kernel was written with Python. So guarantee that it's Python's installed there. Let's see if I got the start menu like I was thinking. I guess it would be under G. Oh, there it is. So there's also one over in the start menu that runs our application. And it should have an uninstaller. It looked like that wanted to put it down in the user directory. So let me check program files. No G there, no greet there, HP, C8, nope, no greet there. I think that one, they wrote app data like a variable, so I think they actually put that in the user's app data. So I think that wasn't a variable, that was actually the app data folder, and I have a feeling it's in here. You can see there's a lot of stuff here. That's become common because we do have right access here, but it's in a hidden folder, so users might not know about it. And that's where Get Kraken installed. And GTK, oh, I don't see it there. What about Romeo? There it is. So that's where it copied and pasted it to. It looks like it went to app data roaming and copied and pasted all of that stuff. Along with this one, that one wasn't in our original. So we have uninstall.exe, which we could run from here. But normally, that's probably under settings. We go to apps. Where's uninstall? Is that here? I still uninstall the old way. I've been using the control panel to uninstall stuff. Yeah. So here's our uninstall, which if it's here, it's also going to be in the control panel. So right click, uninstall. Yep, remove that. Oh, yeah. Oh, you can see what file explorer did. It deleted the file and everything. We don't even have a folder called greeting here anymore. Those desktop icons are gone. I guess no surprises there, what you would expect, right? So there's the finished version. But now we need to get that to users. We don't just download stuff from anywhere. They're going to go look for it, expect it in certain places. Typically a nice looking web page that talks about your app, right? But we need to download it from somewhere else, and GitHub does give us a nice place to download that from. I'm creating a new repository. I'll call it another greeting. Looks like it will work. It's going to be deleted soon. I'm just going to do a completely blank one so that I can just copy this and do that from over here. I'm going to make, well, I'll just leave it here. It's all in one folder, so this will be fine. Normally, we would probably organize this in folders, and our installers would be in a different folder than our source code. But I'll just, and then we maybe download a zip file or something. Probably organize it into folders. That just would kind of make sense, but make sure everything's up to date. I think I used commit the first time. We've talked about commit messages a few times, so the commit messages tonight are obviously very, very bad ones. But we've seen that a few times in this class. So now I need to do git remote add origin to the thing I just copied and pasted. Git push origin main. There we go. Now we reload this. We saw earlier pushing things out to packages with the workflow, but right above that, you'll see releases. You may have even downloaded things from releases a couple times. This is where we would typically put those. We've set the release here, and then on our GitHub pages, we can just hyperlink reference directly to the file, and then that will download if it's an acceptable file. There's different things, but we can link back to the file here. This is the normal place we would put that. So we can create a new release, give it tags to help for search engine optimization. Install. I'll just call it installer. This was for a class example on making .exe installers. Do not run. I'll put that for the message. We probably put a detailed message on your actual software, what it is, but it's a class example going on a public repository. I don't want anybody just be like, what is this? And checking it out. It just installs a let's say run and yeah, I'll go with I'll keep saying that. Do not run. Do not run it. It just installs a hello world. That way people know what it is if they stumble across it. Set as a pre-release so that you can have announcements and stuff. Have a timer going down. 3 days, 2 hours, and 4 minutes until the software comes out. Get people excited about that. Like really excited, right? Software that they barely care about. If you put a timer in there, they will get excited. They will be there when that timer gets close to like the last minute or so, watching that countdown, ready to download it. Even if it's software that they barely care about. It's just one of those things about human psychology. It motivates people. And here's our installer, here's our release. I'm gonna drag that over there. It didn't drag. I guess I dragged to the wrong spot. So I'm gonna click. I'll click. So there's our installer. We probably might also want a since that one's gonna have a wizard. Does that have a wizard to walk through? I think we just did the no wizard, but we probably want the Mac installer as well. Right? We go ahead and build a Mac installer. I usually build a .dev, which is one of the Linux installers. Linux users want the source code, and they'll install it themselves for the most part. But I use an installer just as a flag to let them know that software was tested on Linux. Like it does run on Linux, so it's good to go. But we just have one installer, so when we publish it, make sure you have a valid tag. I guess we have to choose a tag. Create a new tag on publish. Oh, it didn't like that tag.
Are you actually creating the tag?
Yeah. I thought I
Like
did.
it doesn't look like it's actually creating a tag.
Create new tag. Oh, there it is. It definitely created it at that time. It said create on publish. I thought it was gonna automatically do it. Okay, there we go. And notice, well, it's GitHub. It's for most of its life, GitHub was the premier way to exchange open source code. So they're prepared for Linux users, and we put an installer, so they went ahead and included the source code as well. So there's another way to download the zip file or the tar file. It's already, they went ahead and put the Linux version on there. But that's where we would release our installers and how we would make our installers and sort of the process of what to do once the application is finished. I like to cover that at least once in every class because it was never even mentioned in a single course I took. So I've never used that software before, but I have used enough that I can tell you they all look like this. For probably 20 years straight, there was only one option on software to do that. And when people started making open source software that did that, they all just followed what the graphical user interface set up that software had. Ones for Mac look a little bit different, but it's the same process. You'll just go through and fill out the form. A lot of things will be filled out automatically. So you just change defaults, and in a lot of cases, there's only like 5 or 6 things you actually have to do. And in general, you could leave everything else as defaults. But at the same time, you could also go through and change every single one of the defaults to something custom. It's clicking around on software. You don't know how to do that. It didn't seem to like it when I saved it in the same place as the rest of the files, but look through their project information. I think those, facts and all the documentation there. Y'all can click around. That one seemed pretty decent for the free one. There were some features not available. Yeah, go ahead and save those changes. Some features not available, but it looked like in general it was there. Our installer worked. We run that one more time before we finish up for tonight. Or was it in here? In here. So we can go in and run an installer.
It doesn't install the.
Yeah, so it's an MSI installer. I somehow messed up and got that extra one. That one was extra. Let's ignore that file. That I wrote that one off as the first time I've used the software. What were you saying? It does do what?
Like it did install both. It just wrote over the one you dragged.
So yeah, double click this and it all works. When we're done with the software, we're going to control panel this time. All things and uninstaller. There it is. So it's an installer for that software. See the company name for it there. And it clears everything out. So that's what to do when we're finished with software. And one of the biggest things is what we were doing with that batch file. So even if you, no matter what, you want to do this part for your program, don't just let the end user run the program. Make sure everything is in order. And please keep this one in mind. This is one of the few places that can be done shortly. Usually your examples for any sort of error handling, the textbooks and tutorials are going to stop the program from running and print out a message. And that's what happens if we don't handle the error. So that is not handling an error. You want to actually fix the program, but make sure all the stuff you need is there and then run the program. And that's what you give the end user, probably by means of an installer package. And installers for Mac and Linux can be made with similar software that we could just look at. Anybody have any questions about that? Seems straightforward. That one looked pretty decent for the free one. That's the first time I've ever seen it. It wasn't, I've used similar software before. It looked like it had most of the functionality we would need on the free version. I don't know how much the paid for version is, but once again, I'll mention that when you're out there making 6 figures as a software developer, the IRS is going to want a great big chunk of that unless you have a whole bunch of itemized deductions to write off on your taxes. So that would be a business expense when you're making really good software developer money. So at that point, definitely worth paying. Okay, that went longer than I thought. I guess we should have took a break about 45 minutes in. I kept thinking that we'd be done by like 6:15, 6:20 or so. It's been a minute since I asked if anybody had any questions. So I think there's no, if you have any questions, let me know. Remember, your final exam is on a calendar schedule. So all homework is due by Sunday at midnight. I think almost everything's been turned in. But remember, exams are on a calendar schedule. So the exam is due by Saturday at 11:59 p.m. We got an hour and 10 minutes left on our scheduled time. So the next hour should be blocked off on your schedule as like far as this class. So now might be a really good time to take the exam if you haven't done so yet, to make sure you get that. Make sure you don't wake up Sunday morning and realize you forgot to do it. Otherwise, please use our time productively And remember that breaks and relaxation are productive. Almost always, if you take a break, you will be more productive afterwards than if you would have tried to push through the break when you were exhausted and keep working and start making silly mistakes because you're tired. So relaxation is a productive way to spend your time. Keep that in mind. Obviously, like everything, don't take it to the excess, but please use our time productively here. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you all on Thursday, and then we'll have a bunch of short odds and ends that I think will be useful. Won't be a whole like we had tonight. I'll see you Thursday.
Have a good night.